40 pirates, multiple skiffs, and a cargo ship cutting through the Gulf of Aden. In total darkness, the horizon barely visible, the sea chewing its steel like it wants a mistake. On the radar, the dots multiply, then accelerate. The watch team looks up and sees them. Low silhouettes skipping over the waves, engines screaming, spray flashing white in the ship's lights. One skiff surges ahead, another swings wide, and a third closes like it already knows where the ladder will land. On the bow of the lead boat, a rope ladder is already uncoiling. Then the ship's alarm detonates through the night, sharp, relentless, because everyone on board understands what that ladder means. If those men reach the rail, this stops being a chase. It becomes leverage. A boarder doesn't need to win a fight to win the situation. He only needs a foothold on deck, a rushed crew, a door left open, a path toward the bridge. Once pirates control the bridge or seize a crew member, the ship becomes a bargaining chip that can be steered, stalled, and held. That's why minutes decide everything. A cargo ship can't turn like a speedboat, and it can't sprint forever. Every second the skiffs close the gap, the options shrink. Fewer angles to maneuver, fewer chances to deny the ladder, fewer mistakes allowed. Then, beneath the ship's engine hum, another sound starts to push through the wind, low at first, almost imaginary. But it grows fast, heavy and rhythmic, vibrating in your chest before you fully recognize it. Rotors. The pirates don't hear it yet. They're locked on the deck lights and the ladder angle. But a U.S. Navy helicopter is already inbound, moving far faster than any ship can reposition. And in this story, the helicopter isn't coming to trade fire. It's coming to take control of the geometry. Tonight, we're going to decode how 6 minutes can collapse a swarm without turning the sea into a war zone. How a helicopter turns darkness into exposure, confusion into separation, and pressure into retreat. You'll see the exact chain that flips the encounter. Detect, warn, separate, retreat. And you'll get answers to the questions everyone asks in moments like this. Why doesn't the ship just shoot? Why do spotlights and loudspeakers sometimes matter more than bullets? And what does the helicopter do first, before it ever truly engages, when the difference between a near miss and a hostage crisis is measured in meters? To understand why this encounter is so volatile, you have to understand the stage it's happening on. The Gulf of Aden is not a random patch of ocean. It's a global conveyor belt, a shipping corridor connecting the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean, where commercial vessels move along predictable lanes because it's efficient, because it's safer for navigation, and because everybody is trying to reach the next port on schedule. But that predictability is also the trap. The route narrows through choke points, traffic compresses, and at night, the horizon shrinks into a small circle of uncertainty. Out here, distance is protection. Visibility is warning. Speed is survival. And when you're transiting in darkness, every one of those advantages is harder to hold on to. That's why pirate teams in this region don't fight like a navy. They don't need to. Their playbook is built around one thing: closing fast enough to touch the ship before the ship can fully harden itself. A swarm approach is the simplest way to do that. Multiple skiffs come in from different angles, some loud and direct, some wide and quiet, some hanging back to keep the target guessing. The point isn't to win a battle. The point is to overload the ship's attention and force hesitation. Engines screaming, shouted commands. Sudden turns intimidation is part of the tactic, because fear makes people misjudge distances and make poor choices. And then it all narrows to a single mechanical objective: get a ladder to catch. If even one ladder hooks the rail and even one man gets onto the deck, the whole situation can flip in seconds. Their real targets are control and leverage. The bridge is control. Communications are leverage. If they can reach the bridge, they can force the ship to slow, to change course, to stop broadcasting, to disappear into a negotiation. If they can seize radios or damage key systems, they can buy time for more boats to arrive. And if they can capture a crew member, especially an officer, then the ship becomes a bargaining chip that can be traded for money. The pirates don't need to take the whole vessel to profit. They only need to take the situation and make it expensive for everyone else. Now, look at what the cargo ship is up against. A big ship can look powerful, but it's vulnerable in ways that fast boats exploit. It has a slow turn radius, meaning it can't snap away from an intercept without bleeding speed. It has inertia, meaning every course correction takes time and distance. It has blind spots created by its own structure and lights. Bright deck lamps can throw harsh shadows where small craft can hide, and reflections off the water can disguise movement. And at night, the watch team is smaller. There are fewer eyes scanning a wide horizon, fewer cues to notice until a threat is already inside a dangerous distance. Add in fatigue, long transits, and the constant need to avoid collisions in a busy lane, and you can see why pirates choose darkness. It compresses the defender's decision window. This is why modern ships rely on procedure more than bravery. Best management practices, the industry's anti-piracy mindset, are built around layers. Speed is the first layer, because it increases the time pirates need to reach you. Lighting is another, because removing shadows removes hiding places. Water cannons and high-pressure hoses create a moving barrier that makes ladders difficult to place and even harder to climb. Razor wire and physical obstacles deny easy handholds along rails and access points. Doors and hatches are secured, so that even if someone touches deck, they don't immediately reach the bridge or the engine spaces. And the final layer is the citadel, a hardened, safe area where the crew can lock down, stay alive, and keep control systems denied while they communicate with rescuers. In a real attack, the goal is not to win a fight. The goal is to prevent boarding, and if boarding happens, to prevent takeover. Then comes the part most people underestimate: the rules governing the response. Naval forces operating in busy sea lanes don't treat every small boat as an enemy by default. There are fishermen, traders, and legitimate traffic in the same waters, so the first steps are often identification, clear warnings, and de-escalation because certainty matters, and mistakes at sea are irreversible. That's why you'll see spotlights, loudspeakers, and repeated commands before you see anything else. The goal isn't maximum firepower. The goal is breaking intent and separating the pack before it can become leverage. And on this night, that moment arrives fast, because at 3:40, the skiffs cross the line from unknown contacts on a screen to a coordinated assault. At 8 on our timeline, the first real confirmation hits the bridge. The radar picture isn't showing drifting clutter or random traffic, it's showing a pattern. Multiple contacts, small and fast, accelerating directly toward the ship's track. The watch officer calls it out, then calls it again with urgency as the dots tighten their spacing. An electro-optical camera swings to the bearing, zooming into darkness until the horizon breaks into moving points of spray. Through binoculars, the silhouettes resolve. Low boats, riding light, bouncing hard, with the kind of speed you don't waste on passing by. The bridge team shifts from monitoring to action. Engines are pushed up. The helm nudges the ship off the most predictable line, changing course just enough to complicate an intercept without risking collision with other traffic. The general alarm is sounded. And below decks, the crew doesn't panic, they execute. Because in situations like this, the difference between an incident and a disaster is how fast a ship becomes a fortress. By 9:30, the swarm starts to reveal its geometry. The skiffs don't all charge the same point. That would be simple to track and easier to avoid. Instead, one cluster stays behind the stern, maintaining pressure and forcing the ship to keep speed. Another pair runs wide on the port side, trying to cut off the ship's next turn. A third group angles toward the starboard quarter, searching for the shadow line where the deck lights don't fully reach. It's a moving box pressure from behind, threats on the flanks, and a closing lane toward the rail. The ship can't outturn all of them at once, and the pirates know it. This isn't about sinking anything. It's about getting close enough that the ship's size becomes a weakness. They don't need to sink the ship, just get one ladder to catch. One ladder that hooks the rail. One climber who gets a foothold. One door that isn't sealed fast enough. That's all it takes to turn a high-speed approach into a takeover attempt. At 11, the ship's defensive checklist moves from theory to muscle memory. Water cannons are brought online and tested, their streams sweeping the edges of the deck like a moving fence. Deck lights are adjusted to kill the darkest blind spots and give the lookouts cleaner contrast on the water. Razor wire and barriers already installed become the difference between a ladder sliding off and a ladder biting. Access points are sealed in a deliberate order. Exterior doors first, then internal hatches, then choke points leading toward the bridge. On the bridge, one person holds navigation, one handles communications, one tracks contacts, and one watches the camera's rolls snapping into place because clarity prevents chaos. In engineering, the focus is simple. Keep speed, keep steering responsiveness, keep the ship moving. And in the background, the Citadel plan becomes real. Not because anyone wants it, but because the crew cannot afford to hope the pirates fail. They have to prepare for the possibility that someone reaches the deck. From 12:30 to 14:30, the first warning phase begins loud, clear, and repeated. The ship transmits on VHF, ordering the small craft to keep clear and identifying itself as a commercial vessel under threat. The horn blasts, a blunt signal meant to remove any claim of misunderstanding. Spotlights sweep across the water, then lock onto the lead skiffs one by one, turning each boat into a bright target in a black sea. For a moment, this is where many encounters end. Legitimate traffic turns away when it's illuminated, hailed, and warned. But these skiffs keep closing. They keep their angles. They keep their speed. A ladder is raised again, and the lead boat lines up for the approach that matters most. The one where the ship's wake and forward momentum help the ladder bite. The defenders can see it forming in real time. The skiff surges, matches the ship's motion, and tries to slide into the narrow band where a climber can grab steel. At this point, there's no ambiguity left. This is an attack, and the pirates are betting they can touch the rail before help arrives. Then, at 14:30, the sound changes. At first, it's just a faint vibration under the wind and engines, easy to dismiss if you're not listening for it. But within seconds, it swells into a heavy, rhythmic thump that seems to press down on the ocean itself. Rotors. The helicopter is inbound fast, low, and closing the distance with a speed the ship simply can't match. The bridge team hears it. The lookouts hear it. And even the skiffs, if they're paying attention, will hear it too. And this is where the math of the encounter flips. Up to now, it's been a cargo ship trying to deny a ladder. Now it becomes something else entirely. An airborne presence that can see the whole pattern, control the approach lanes, and dismantle the swarm's coordination. This is where the fight changes from ship versus skiffs to air power versus swarm. At 16, the helicopter arrives like a switch being thrown. It comes in low over the water close enough that you can feel the rotor wash, slap the surface, and kick up mist fast enough that there's no doubt this is not a distant patrol. The spotlight snaps on, and the lead skiff is suddenly pinned in a cone of harsh white light. In the dark ocean, that beam doesn't just illuminate, it exposes. The skiff's outline, its wake, its angle toward the ship, everything becomes visible to everyone at once. Then the loudspeaker cuts through the wind with clear, repeated commands, short phrases delivered like a metronome. Stay clear. Turn away. Stop your approach. The message is not a conversation. It's a boundary being drawn in the air. And right here is the first decoded truth of the turning point. Light is control. Noise is control. The pirates lose the advantage of confusion. From 1730 to 1930, the helicopter starts doing what the ship alone cannot do. It takes ownership of the lanes. The aircraft doesn't chase every skiff like a dog after a flock. It positions itself between the ship and the tightest cluster, cutting off the shortest approach routes. When one skiff tries to surge toward the starboard quarter where the ladder angle is best, the helicopter slides laterally and blocks the lane, forcing the driver to turn away or risk being held under the beam and tracked. When another skiff swings wide to port, hoping to come in from the dark side, the helicopter pivots and drifts into that path, denying the approach without touching the boat. It's aerial crowd control, and the tool is geometry. The helicopter doesn't need to win a fight against a skiff. It only needs to prevent the skiff from reaching the ship's rail at the same time as the others. This is the core of why swarm tactics work, and why they fail. A swarm only looks dangerous when it moves as one problem. It forces the defenders to split attention, left, right, stern, ladder, bridge, comms all at once. It creates uncertainty. Which boat is the real threat? Which one is a decoy? Where will the ladder bite? But the moment the pack is broken into smaller pieces, the uncertainty evaporates. A single skiff, isolated under a spotlight, is no longer an overwhelming threat. It's a choice. Turn away, or be identified and followed. A pair of skiffs, separated from the group, can't create enough pressure to force the ship into a mistake. And without coordination, the pirates lose the one advantage they rely on more than any weapon: momentum. The helicopter is stripping that momentum away, lane by lane, until the swarm stops behaving like a weapon and starts behaving like individuals. By 1930, the turning point becomes procedural. Identify the contacts and confirm intent. Warn clearly and repeatedly. Demonstrate presence close enough that the warning feels real, undeniable, inescapable. Then deny the approach routes that matter. The ladder angles, the shadow lines, the stern pressure points. The helicopter cycles this chain over and over, and each loop makes the pirate's situation worse. Here's the second decoded truth. The helicopter's real weapon is time pressure. Every second it stays overhead, the pirates burn fuel and options. They can't loiter and regroup without being seen. They can't reset the attack without being separated again. They can't keep pushing forward without remaining under the beam, under the loudspeaker, under a presence that can call in more help. The longer the helicopter holds the lanes, the smaller the pirate's window becomes until the window closes. From 21 to 22:30, the retreat begins. And it begins exactly the way swarms usually collapse. Not as a dramatic, unified turn, but as a loss of belief. The lead skiff peels away first, widening the gap and searching for darkness outside the spotlight. A second follows, then a third. The boats on the flanks break off as they realize they can't reach the rail without being cut off. The formation dissolves into a handful of separate escapes, each one trying to look like just another boat again. Meanwhile, the cargo ship does the smartest thing it can do. It doesn't chase. It doesn't slow. It doesn't drift into the pirates' game. It maintains speed and a steady course towards safer waters and convoy lanes, keeping distance as the primary defense. Because distance is what prevents the ladder from ever becoming a foothold. At 22:30, the confirmation comes in the quiet language of instruments. The radar contacts spread out and fade, no longer closing in tight formation. The bridge reports the immediate threat clear. The helicopter stays overhead, not as a victory lap, but as insurance, watching for a regroup, watching for a second wave, watching for the one skiff that might gamble on a last approach. The ocean returns to darkness, but the geometry has changed. The ship is moving away, the attackers are moving apart, and the pressure is gone. And that's the final line of the turning point. The simplest summary of what air power did in the space of a few minutes. 6 minutes, no boarding, no hostages. The swarm broke. At 24-0, the ocean doesn't look different, but the lesson is locked in. This wasn't a heroic duel or a cinematic battle. It was a timed problem solved by procedure, awareness, and control. And the first takeaway is the simplest. Early detection beats firefights. The moment the watch team recognized fast, coordinated contacts and treated them as a closing threat, the ship gained its most valuable resource: time. Time to increase speed, time to alter course, time to activate defenses, time to seal access points, time to get the crew into the right roles, and time to call for support. In piracy encounters, the decisive moment often happens before anyone ever touches the rail. If you detect late, you fight from behind. If you detect early, you can deny the approach before it becomes a boarding. The second takeaway is about how swarm attacks really work. A swarm isn't dangerous because a single skiff is unstoppable. It's dangerous because coordination creates pressure. Multiple angles force defenders to split attention. Noise and speed create confusion. Confusion creates openings. And openings create ladders that catch. That's why the turning point in this incident wasn't more firepower. It was breaking the geometry. Once the helicopter began denying lanes and separating the pack into smaller groups, the swarm stopped behaving like a weapon. It became isolated choices, single boats under a spotlight, forced to decide whether to keep pushing or peel away. Without a tight, coordinated approach, the pirates lose momentum. Without momentum, they lose confidence. And once confidence collapses, the attack collapses with it. The third takeaway surprises people, but it's one of the most important. Non-lethal dominance ends fights faster than violence. Light, voice, and presence are not soft. They are control tools. A spotlight removes concealment. A loudspeaker removes ambiguity. A low-altitude show of force removes the attacker's belief that he can act without consequence. When pirates rely on darkness, confusion, and intimidation, the fastest way to break them is to strip those tools away. You don't need to escalate into a destructive exchange if you can collapse intent in minutes. In many real-world maritime incidents, that is exactly the difference between a near miss and a crisis that lasts days. From 26-0 to 27-30, the shipside best practices become clear because the ship didn't survive by improvising. It survived by doing the boring things perfectly. Maintain speed whenever possible, because distance is safety. Use lighting intelligently, because shadows are cover. Bring water cannons online early, because the latter is the pivot point of the entire attack. Seal access points, because denying the bridge and engine spaces denies control. Keep Citadel discipline, because if boarding happens, the crew's job is to survive and prevent takeover, not to chase intruders, and keep communications short and standardized, because in the dark, under stress, confusion spreads faster than any skiff. The crews that train for these incidents don't look dramatic, they look calm, and calm is a weapon. Then, from 27-30 to 29-0, we zoom out to why this matters. Modern piracy isn't about winning battles at sea. It's about leverage. Pirates want a situation that forces someone to pay by seizing control, taking time, or threatening people. They're not trying to defeat a navy. They're trying to create a negotiation. That's why airborne overwatch is often the fastest way to deny leverage. A helicopter can arrive quickly, see the full pattern, track movement, and control the approach lanes in a way a ship cannot. It collapses the pirates' window before they can convert proximity into power. And once leverage is denied, the attack has no purpose left. So here's the question for the next episode. This time, the pirates picked a target they believed they could pressure until a helicopter broke the swarm and forced a retreat. But what happens when pirates pick the wrong target from the very beginning, and the ship isn't alone? What happens when the easy victim turns out to be a convoy, a protected route, or a vessel already under tight watch, and the swarm walks into a trap built on patience and timing? If you want more real-world naval encounters decoded step-by-step, subscribe, because the next contact starts in the dark.